Okay, so today we're going to be learning how to integrate Facebook login for your Firebase application for iOS. So we'll go onto the Firebase website, which is firebase.google.com. We'll have to sign in. Once you sign in, you will get this screen and you'll just click on Get Started for free. This is going to take us to our console. Once we come to our console, we need to click on Create New Project. Give a name to your project. For this tutorial, we're going to name this My App, and we'll leave the country as the default. Takes a few seconds for this app to be created. Once the app is created, you're taken to your application dashboard, where you have all these features that are available that you can integrate with Firebase. The first thing we need to do is we need to add Firebase to our iOS application. So we click on add Firebase to our iOS app. The first thing we need is the iOS bundle. This we will get by going to our Xcode project. So we go to Xcode. We'll have to click on create new project, which will bring you to this screen. Select a single view application and give your application a name. We'll name it My App only for simplicity and ensure that Swift is selected. The name of the app does not need to be the same as your Firebase app. This is just for simplicity. We click on next. We go and save it on our desktop for now. And the first thing that opens up the page, it gives us the bundle ID. So we copy this bundle ID, come back, paste it here. Now when you click on add here, it's going to download the Google service info.plist file for your application, which you have to include into your Xcode project. So we click on add app. As you can see that it has downloaded the Google service info.plist file. We can go here to our downloads. And I already had one from an earlier project, so I'm going to get rid of this one. And this is the new one that was created. I'm going to rename it back to Google Service Info.plist. And it asks us to move the Google Service Info.plist file you just downloaded into the root of your Xcode project. Open up our Xcode project and drag this file into our project, and we select copy items if needed. Now we come back here and we click on continue. Now we need to install the Firebase dependencies, which can be done by something known as CocoaPods. To learn more about CocoaPods, you can click this link. For now, we'll copy this and we need to open our terminal. CD into our project directory. So we go to CD desktop and we will CD into my application. Here you can see that our application is here, and we can create a new pod file by doing pod init. This creates a pod file to see it. Now to open the pod file, we'll use the nano editor. And here below pods my app, we will add the pod Firebase. Now the next thing we need to do is pod install, which is pod install. It will install the Firebase dependencies. Now once that is done, the important thing to remember is this creates an .xc workspace file for your application. Use this file for all future development on your application. Currently we're using the default Xcode application that we created, but it wants us to use the other one, which is what I'll show you here. If you go to our desktop, my app, this is that new file that is created. So we're going to close the project here and open up this one. As you can see, there is a pod section that's added and our own application is here. Coming back here, continue, and now we need to connect Firebase when your app starts up. For that we need to import Firebase, and we need to put in this line of code fir app.configure into our did finish launching with options. So let's do that. Xcode, my app delegate, import Firebase, and did finish launching. We'll have fir app.configure, and that's it. That's what we required for the configuration. Now what we'll do is we'll open up the documentation and go into the docs and go into the get started guide for iOS. So this portion is we have already completed. What we need to do is go into the authentication section, introduction, and go down. It shows you all the different ways that you can use authentication. What we need is federated identity provider integration. Click on the iOS tab for Facebook, and it'll tell you before you begin you must add this pod. So again, open up iTerm or terminal of your choice, nano into your pod file, add the dependency, and save that, and pod install. So okay, and we have that installed. We can go and cross check that. In our pods we have Firebase auth available to us. Now it says if you haven't connected your app to your Firebase project, do so from the Firebase console, which has already been done. On the Facebook for Developers side, get the app ID and the secret for your app and enable Facebook login from your Firebase console. So first let's get the app ID and an app secret. Oh wait, let's first go into the Firebase console again and go into our app and go into auth. It's going to give us the option set up sign in method. Click on face, edit this, and we need the app ID and the app secret key. What we do is we'll go to Facebook developers, which is developers.facebook.com. You'll have to create an account here. I already have an account and I've signed in. We'll click on hover over my apps and click on add a new app, and we'll select iOS as the platform, and we'll name our application my app, and you just need to put in email address, and for simplicity we'll put this in as lifestyle, and we'll create app ID, and we need to select all the waterfalls here. So our app is created. We can follow this quick start guide, but we'll rather go through the documentation later. For now we need the app ID, which we can get and by going to my app, and when we come into our dashboard we should see our app ID right there. We copy the app ID, go into Firebase and paste the app ID here. We also need the app secret key. For that we'll have to enter in our Facebook password, which is already there. So we click on show and it shows us the app secret key. We copy that, come here and we paste it here. And we need to remember one more important step, which is to complete setup, add this OAuth redirect URI to your Facebook app configuration. So copy this URI, go back, go back to your Facebook developers page and click on add product, and we'll click get started on Facebook login, and we need to paste valid OAuth redirect URIs, and we save changes. Coming back to Firebase and Facebook, we need to enable it as well. So we click edit and we click on enable. So that is enabled, and if we go back into the documentation, authentication, introduction, and I shouldn't have closed that. Yeah, So once we have that, we can authenticate with Firebase. Integrate Facebook login into your app by following the developer's documentation, which we can see from here. If we go into Facebook developers documentation, I'm already on the docs page. Click on iOS SDK and get started on iOS. First thing you need to do is download the SDK and unzip it into your documents/Facebook SDK folder. In my case, I've already done that in my documents folder. You can see Facebook SDK. You will get these set of files once you download it. We've already created a new Facebook app, and now we need to configure the Facebook app for iOS, which is by going to the settings in the dashboard. We need to put in the bundle ID, and we need to enable single sign-in. So let's go into app dashboard and settings. We already have an iOS application, and we don't. So we select add platform, we select iOS, and we put in our bundle ID here, which again is what we put here. Paste that in here, and single sign-on should be yes. That is done. We save the changes, and coming back to the documentation, it tells us add the SDK to your Xcode project, open the documents/Facebook SDK and drag the CoreKit framework. So we open up Xcode again, open up our Finder, drag this CoreKit framework into the frameworks folder. If in case a frameworks folder does not exist, you can create it, and we deselect copy items if needed because we don't want the app to bloat. It's going to just reference it from the document section. And you need to add this one more line to your build settings and the framework search path in the build settings. So we open our Xcode again, my app, build settings, framework search paths, and we open this up, double click it and click on add and paste this in, and we need to change this username to your username folder on your computer. In my case, it's Nath Varun. Select this. You can see this by going into here, and you can go into Macintosh HD users, and you can see the name there. Now once that is done, we can click out of that and go back to our documentation. Now we need to configure our Xcode project. This was given in the quick start once we created a Facebook app, but we need to copy this into our info.plist file, which is inside my app, info.plist. Right click this and open as source code. At the bottom, paste this in. Before we make any changes to that, for iOS users only, we need to whitelist the Facebook apps. So we copy this and paste this below our previous paste. So what we need now is we need the Facebook app ID over here. If you follow the quick start, it already has the app ID stored, but it's not much of a deal breaker. So we copy this and we paste this in here. We need to again paste our app ID in here. And we also need the name of our application, which should match exactly of what our name is that we given on Facebook. So it's my app, and we save this. Now once that is done, you need to connect your application delegate. For that, we have this line of code, but as you can see that this is not in Swift and is in Objective-C, and unfortunately Facebook does not have the documentation available in Swift as well. But there's this really beautiful website called objective-to-swift.com, which lets you convert Objective-C very easily into Swift. Click on convert now. Paste in the Objective-C code on the left and click on convert. There we have it. We just copy that, come back to Xcode, go into app delegate, and it tells us to paste it in our did finished with launch did finish launching with the options method. And as you can see, we're getting an error here, unresolved unidentified. That's because we need to import our Facebook SDK login kit, and we should see that go. Coming back, we also need to add a handler function which handles any of the errors that are there. So we need to also add the open URL method. Copy this, go into Swiftify, paste it here. Coming back here, we can just paste it below our UI application method, and it's giving us an error. Okay, with Swift 2.0, we had to put in a question mark. Now that's been done, we can ignore this other error. We're coming back to the documentation. This is optional, this section. If you'd like to log events on your Facebook developers page, you can do this, but Firebase is going to do this for us anyways, but we'll still just do it for simplicity. Post this in, convert it, and we get this go. And where does it want us to add it? And it wants us to add an application did become active. Post this here. This is done. Coming back to the documentation. Now what we need is we need to add Facebook login. We've already done the general setup. What we need to do is drag the Facebook login kit now. Earlier we only dragged the core kit. Now we also need the login kit. We go to Facebook SDK and we select it and put it into the frameworks folder like we did before. Remember to deselect copy items if needed and paste it there. Now we need to add the button. So what we'll do is we need the Facebook login button. We just copy this line of code here, copy it, go to Swiftify, paste this in here, convert. What this does is it gives us the code for creating the Facebook login button. We come into our view controller because we'd want this to happen from our view controller, and we paste this in here. We'll also do one thing, that we'll put this line of code outside so that it's accessible. As you can see, it's giving us an error, so we can import Facebook login kit, and the error is gone. Now with the login button, you have to also ask for permissions, so we look for permissions. There we have it, and we paste these permissions in before the button is added. These are the default set of permissions available. If you want to give, if you want other information about the person, you're going to have to give it in for review before it can be added into your app. Also, what we have to do is, since we're adding the button in, we can also tap the login button clicked method and the did logout method. That, if you can see, if you come here, is to get notifications of login results or logout events, assign a delegate to Facebook login button that confirms to Facebook login button delegate. So let's click on it. What it tells us is that we need this method is mandatory, and we also need this method which is mandatory. Now, and we have the login button did logout and the login button methods which are mandatory. So we get the login button method which is given here. Before that, we need to implement the Facebook login button delegate, which will give us an error until we implement its methods. So login button, we can find it here, it's available to us. and for now we'll just print user logged in. We also need to implement the logout button. Login button did log out, and we'll print in user did log out. As we can see, when we go back to the Firebase documentation, it asks us to set the delegate to self, which is the view controller within which it is acting. That we must do, so we'll come back, put this in here, and what we'll do is we'll put in self to explicitly access it. And what this line of code is doing is it is just centering the button. This line of code is giving us the permissions, and this is setting the delegate, and this line of code is adding the button to the actual view. As you can see, the example of the login button is also given here, but the logout button is not mentioned. So as of now, if we go and we just run this application, we should see the login button on the page, on the simulator. And there we have the login button, which if we click on it, it should take us to Facebook and says your app will receive your public profile, friends list and email, continue as Varun. And as you can see, it's logged in, and you click on logout. Clicking on logout logs out the user, and in the next video I'll show you a more practical implementation of how to integrate the Facebook login along with the Firebase authentication.